The next type of support we're going to look at is a polyline. Polylines are a little bit different than bar supports in the fact that they're more of a structural wall. Let's go ahead and take a look at our bracket practice. We have removed the bar supports that were previously in place in favor of a sturdier, easier to remove bar support. More applicable in this instance, and I'll show you why. I'm going to delete, and I'm going to get rid of these anchors in place, and to do that I'm going to right click, remove unused. Now when you have a edge that is highlighted in red like so instead of an entire face marked as a cluster, an edge allows you to right click and choose Edge with Polyline Support. Now typically you can also create a polyline from scratch where you click and add your own anchor points to add said polyline. However, if you'd like, you can also right click on the edge with Polyline Support, and it will create it for you. This might not always be the end-all be-all support that you're looking for, but it is a great place to kind of help start, and then from there I can grab anchor points and adjust or move them as I see best fit. Now, one thing we should mention, this is a good spot for a polyline, but one thing to note in design is that the polyline support edges will hang over the side of this sharp corner. So that could be some potential support marks to sand and remove after the part is done being printed. A chamfer on that edge in the design in the original CAD file would help save us that work with those support marks. And that looks good. I like that polyline, so we're going to apply to part. Let's take a look at this cable holder. This is a part that we will eventually do a full Z-stack with, and so we're going to put some extra supports that might not typically be here. You'll notice I've lifted this off of the platform, and if we try to set it back down, what we're going to do is we want to lift this a simple even number. We're going to use the number 6 again. So as I lift that up, we're going to go 6 millimeters. That gives us enough space to build a good polyline. And the reason that we are adding that height in Z is because if just this edge were to be placed on the platform, it's not a solid enough surface to adhere to the platform and continue building the rest of the model. Lifting it up will allow us to put a support underneath and then go from there. Now you'll notice this entire face is 45 degrees, but it's marked as an entire cluster because in my analysis I have turned this up. If it was below 45, it's not highlighted, but if I want to adjust it, or if I want to right click and choose to create polyline support on cluster, again, it will do a lot of the work for me. Maybe not what I want as final supports, but potentially a good start, depending on the situation. I want to add a polyline that goes right across this edge. We can see here we have the edge marked again as such. I can choose to edge with Polyline Support. Now as you add these, you may notice that your polyline looks extremely thin, and mine actually has a good body to it. There's some thickness there. If yours is very thin, it's time for us to go to the Edit tab, and we can go to the presets for elastomers, rigids, and tough that are included. To add those, you just select the one that you want, O1 rigid polyline, choose the gear, and select to load. You have to have your support selected and load. That's the profile I was using, so it looked like nothing changed. The next spots I'd like to add polylines are along these edges. Now I don't need to add polylines in between because that surface is at 45 degrees, so it should be self-supporting. If this were below 30 degrees, I may need to add more polylines. When I'm drawing these from scratch, I'm going to choose Create New Polyline, and I'm going to start at the bottom corner here, and we're going to drop to the top corner. One thing to note is if I continue to click, is that it will continue to add polyline points in continuous line format. This is great if you have an odd shape or you need to create a custom structure, or maybe you have a circular part or an arc that this would be good to put around the perimeter. For what I'm doing, I just want 2 lines. So I'm going to hit escape and I'm going to select and delete that support. Again, we have extra anchors. I can right click, remove unused anchors. So this time as I add the polyline, I'm going to create the first one, select create new polyline again, and that will start my next anchor over again. Those look good. However, as we're starting to place supports, we want to look and kind of analyze where they meet the part. Right up here, if we take a look, we can see that the polyline supports, the breaking points, are underneath the edge. This is ideal for a bottom surface that is not critical, so it'll be easier for me to sand on the bottom as opposed to the side once I've pulled the support off. Now as I zoom in down here, you'll notice the polyline support is extruding out through the edge ever so slightly. This would be an instance where I'll want to grab the anchor point and try to move it into a place that does not make the breaking point stand outwards from the model. Being able to adjust anchor points can be tricky based on the angle that you're looking at them. And nudge that in a little bit more, and that looks good. I like that right there. I'll check the other side. If you have a support or a polyline that kind of meets at the edge of a model and it prints that way, it will be somewhat embedded into the model and could be difficult to sand off. So you want to always check that those are located in the most ideal position so that they're not adding to your model, so to speak. Okay, one more quick tip. If I want to make these very easy to remove all in one, I'll make sure that somehow they might intersect down here, or at least the feet of the supports intersect, so that when it's time to remove this support, I could potentially pull all this off as one, or I can keep them separate. Either way will work. Polyline supports are great at being adaptive, and you can use them in all types of situations that aren't just for straight lines or edges. You can use them as long as you have enough room for them to construct upwards. Just make sure they have enough space. Then we hit apply to part, keep editor, and we're ready to move on.